Time I will call the regular meeting of the Board of Adjustments and Appeals for April 26, 2017 to order. Would you please join me as we stand and pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Check mark, check mark. May we have roll call, please?
Chairman Taylor.
Here.
Vice Chairman Shahayam.
Here.
Member Hunley.
Here.
Member Johnson.
Here.
Alternate Member Smith Rodriguez.
Here.
Very good. We have 5, so we have a quorum. Looking at the first item here, approval of the minutes from March 2nd, 2000. Was it March 2nd? Yeah, March 2nd. Yeah, sorry, moved it over. 2017. Did anyone see any corrections or additions that need to be added to the minutes?
I see none.
Seeing none, do I have a motion to accept?
I move to accept the minutes from March 2nd, 2017.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Very good. All right. Speech time. All right. All persons who anticipate speaking on any public hearing item must fill out an oath card to be heard on that agenda item and sign the oath contained thereon. These cards are located on the table at the rear of the council chamber or may be obtained from the recording secretary. This meeting will be conducted in accordance with procedures adopted in Resolution 24-1997. Those speaking in favor of a request will be heard first. Those opposed will be heard second, and those who wish to make a public comment on an item will speak third. The applicant may make a brief rebuttal if necessary. A representative for either side, for or against, may cross-examine a witness. Anyone who speaks is considered a witness. If you have photographs, sketches, or documents you desire for the commission to consider, they must be submitted into evidence and will be retained by the city. Please submit such exhibits to the recording secretary. You'll have filled out cards. Good. Okay. Staff, has the agenda item been properly advertised?
Yes.
Very good. Are there any members who have visited the site or spoken to members of the public regarding an item to be reviewed this evening?
No.
No.
Visiting is that I drive up and down US 1
Well, yeah.
2 or 3 times a day,
We don't.
but I have not stopped at the site or spoken to anyone myself. All right, seeing none, then we'll move on. There is no consent agenda. There is no old business, so we'll go straight to new business, which is variance 4-2017. The address is 1700 US Highway 1. Staff.
The variance before you tonight is for a second wall sign at 77 South Highway 1, US Highway 1. The request is made by Mr. Frank Moreau, the applicant. He's requesting a variance to Section 39-173 of the code. Now, just so you know, since our last meeting, the new code, if you remember to call the project the planning staff worked on the past year, has come into effect. So a lot of the code references that are in this report have now changed, but the language, content, and the regulations are still the same. So the new code section that's being requested a variance to is 32-10. So the request is to allow a second wall sign for property located in the industrial zoning district. That's the M2 heavy industrial zoning district. Property, again, is at 77 South US Highway 1. The future land use, the comprehensive plan, future land use of the property is industrial. The surrounding zoning includes M2 industrial to the north, a light industrial zoning that is in Brevard County to the south. Across the street on the east side of the property, there are several zoning districts in the county, including general retail, commercial, retail housing, or warehousing, and wholesale commercial, single-family, mobile home park, and recreational vehicle park. And then to the west of the property, there's another M2 Titusville zoning district, again inside the city. The property is rectangular in shape with approximately 400 plus feet of frontage and 1,500 plus feet deep from US Highway 1 all the way to the Florida East Coast Railroad. The property is approximately 12.77 acres. The use in the property is manufacturing and warehousing, and it's called the Logistics Center. To give you some more orientation about this before I go on to the powers of the BAA, I'm going to refer you to page 20 of your packet. And you will see a layout, concept plan for the full build-out of the property. And you'll see a phase one, a building called phase one, and another building there labeled phase two. Phase one was permitted, constructed, and is complete. Phase two is not under review now. The property, when the phase one was completed, was split into two, and so now there are two lots on this property. And I'm going to refer you to page 14 of your packet. The subject property is now that phase one portion of this property. There are two lots now of this unified site plan, or concept plan, excuse me. Unless you have any questions, I'll move on to the powers of the BAA. Okay. So going back to page 11 of your packet, I'll just briefly go into what the powers are of the Board of Adjustment in reviewing this application. The board must consider the following criteria: that there are special conditions and circumstances that exist on the property that are peculiar to the property. The special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant. Granting the variance requested will not confer upon the applicant any special privilege. The literal interpretation of the provisions of the ordinance would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by others in the same zoning. The variance granted is the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of the land, building, or structure. The granting of the variance will preserve the spirit of the ordinance and remain in harmony with its general purpose and intent. In granting a variance, the public safety and welfare must be assured, and in no case shall the granting of variance result in a change of use, which is not an issue here. So I'll go into the analysis, and I won't read everything word for word, but I'll just briefly go through each part of the paragraphs here. The logistics center includes two large warehouses, large warehouses and distribution buildings. One is, as I mentioned, is already complete. A site plan permit was approved in 2015, and phase one was completed. And then later on, the property was split into two. The phase one includes a multi-tenant building with space to allow what we've estimated up to 8 or more tenants. The applicant is before you tonight is the first tenant in phase one, and they are occupying that unit or that portion of the building that's immediately closest or adjacent to US 1. I'm going to refer you back to page 20 of your packet so I can identify on the concept plan where the tenant is occupying the building. So on page 20, you'll see phase one, the very lower right corner of that building is where the applicant is occupying the building. On page 17 of your packet, you will see a rendering of, or a photo of a sign, a wall sign, for the front of that building, or the facade of that building. And that was permitted, and is currently existing on the front of the building. On page 16 of your packet, you will see a rendering of the same type of sign, but on the wall facing US 1. This is what's being requested. Currently, the code only allows one wall sign, and the applicant's requesting the second wall sign. My understanding is that the wall sign that's being requested here is about 15 square feet. Unless you have any questions, I'll go back to the report. Okay, on page 12 of your packet, I included the definition from the code of what a wall sign is. It is an on-premise sign which is painted on, attached to, or erected flush against the exterior wall of a building and is supported by the building. Further down, I included the section of the code that is most relevant here and a portion of the code that's being requested for a variance to. The former section number is 39-173. The current section now is 32-10. And that section is called Surface Area and Number of Wall Signs. So it states here, except as authorized by this section, each separately licensed business shall be allowed one wall sign. So we look at the exceptions here to see what can allow them to have a second wall sign. If you look under A2, buildings having more than one street frontage on an existing paved right-of-way, public right-of-way, may have one additional wall sign affixed to that secondary right-of-way frontage. That's not the case here. There is not a secondary right-of-way. If you look under B, multi-tenant buildings, under 2, B2, buildings having more than one street frontage may have additional wall signage affixed to that secondary right-of-way frontage as follows. That's also not the case here. So we do not have a second right-of-way. So therefore, that's why they are before you to request a variance. I will state that if they had that second right-of-way, they could possibly use paragraphs B to A or B, if you follow me. Okay, so A, it says corner unit tenants may have one additional wall sign affixed to their secondary right-of-way frontage if they had that secondary right-of-way. The size of that secondary wall sign could not exceed 10% of the smallest or narrowest building elevation or equal to the size of the primary wall sign, whichever is less. We came up with a calculation of that, and I'll explain that in a moment. Or they could use option B if they had that secondary right-of-way, which is a multi-tenant directory wall sign. It may be fixed to the secondary right-of-way frontage according to paragraph B1. And when you go back up to B1, then it allows you to have that multi-tenant sign, that second sign, to be up to 20% of the wall space. So we came up with two different calculations. I'll explain what I mean here in a moment. So continuing on that same page 12 of your packet, the logistics center is a multi-tenant building, but it is not located on a corner lot with a secondary right-of-way. The applicant has indicated that the second wall sign is needed for visibility to drivers on US 1. Approval of the variance request will waive the secondary right-of-way requirement for a second wall sign on a multi-tenant building. So moving to page 13 of your packet. We believe that there is an option available to the applicant and property owner. A monument sign is currently located at the property entrance, but it is not utilized right now as a multi-directory sign or a multi-tenant sign. I'll refer you to page 20 of your packet just to give you an idea as to where that sign is located. On that concept plan, there is a monument sign near the entrance of the property. And my understanding currently, it just says Logistics Center. It does not identify or have space for the tenants to place their names or their businesses. So we believe that might be an option, but they would have to work that out with the property owner. And if they were able to work that out with the property owner, then we do not believe that there would be a need for a variance since the second wall sign would be not necessary. The staff is concerned that the granting of the variance will encourage tenants of the remaining units that would occupy Phase 1 or Phase 2 to submit a similar request. The staff believes that the variance request, if granted, should benefit all the tenants in order to prevent future variance requests. So therefore, the following measurements may provide a guide in that decision. Here are the measurements I was mentioning earlier. So the area of the side of the building elevation facing US 1 is approximately 8,400 square feet. And I'm going to refer you to page 20 of your packet again, to that concept plan. And the way we calculated that out is the height of the building by the length of the frontage, the side of the building facing US 1. And it's a pretty big wall. And all they're asking is, right now, is a 15 square foot second wall sign. So based on what the code would allow up to 1,680 square feet could be permitted. The variance is granted for a multi-tenant directory wall sign per that subparagraph B2A, which I mentioned earlier. Otherwise, if the sign is going to be limited just to this business only, or to this tenant rather, then if you look under option B, a wall sign up to 840 square feet could be permitted if the variance is granted as a corner unit. The applicant is requesting a second 15.5 square foot wall sign. If the remaining 7 or more tenants request a second 15.5 square foot wall sign similar to this current applicant, then either one of the measurements, A or B, could be utilized. The variance request for a second wall sign is not the minimum necessary to make possible the reasonable use of the property. If the board is inclined to approve the variance, staff recommends that measurement A be selected as a condition of approval, thereby allowing the multi-tenant directory wall sign of up to 1,680 square feet is more than sufficient to accommodate all future tenant signs and prevent similar requests. Approval of the variance with the conditions meet the intent of the code. Purpose of our recommendation is to prevent future requests for variances. If you are inclined to approve this variance request for a second wall sign, we would recommend that you do it as a multi-tenant sign, allowing them the full potential to all of the other tenants to be able to utilize that space. So it'll be one sign with all the other tenants on there. That could be negotiated between the tenants and the property owner and would not require them to have to come to the city to request a similar variance and have this issue brought to you over and over. So that's our recommendation. If you have any questions, I'll try and answer that.
Is there any questions of staff? Yes, sir.
Could you explain to me the 15.5 square feet again? I don't understand, 15.5 square feet seems like ridiculous number, small number too,
It is.
compared to the building.
It is. It's a very small number. They're not utilizing their full potential. Even on the original sign permit on page 17, which is currently there now, was permitted. They're not utilizing the full 20% that they were allowed on that wall there. So you're correct. It is very small.
So explain it to me again, what are they doing with this 15.5 feet?
They simply want to have a second wall sign. The code doesn't allow us to permit a second wall sign unless they have a second right-of-way. And so we believe that if we couldn't find a hardship in that issue, but what we're recommending to you is that if you want to approve or you feel inclined to improve this second wall sign, that you do it as a multi-tenant sign.
The 15.5 or the 1680?
1680.
So,
Because that's the full potential of what the calculations, the code would allow. So they can put a 15.5 sign for each tenant, or they can make it as large as they want, but that would be the maximum, obviously. But at least in that scenario, all the tenants could occupy that space, and we wouldn't have to come back to you with a second request for another variance.
this property is abutting a roadway, not a roadway, a public roadway, but there must be an easement or something between the properties that they are using.
My understanding is that the property was split down the middle of the large driveway that is built there on the property, and that there are going to be cross-access easements. If they may have been recorded already for the property.
The reason I'm saying that is there is it's not a similar situation. We have Bobby Lane. It goes all the way around from 405 to 405, and that's a private road. And they have every tenant has a sign in the front of their building or of their house. I mean their office.
Unit.
What's that?
The unit, I think. is
Yeah,
the word you're looking
every
for.
unit, has a sign, and I don't think, that was in the code. It doesn't, it allows you to do that or doesn't allow you, I'm not sure. But this is not similar to it, is it?
I can't speak for that scenario because I'd have to see what that
Yeah.
case.
But in this case, the tenants want to put, if they want to put a 15.5 square feet sign on each of the building, each of the unit, then they can't do the same thing on the end of the building?
Right now, they're not limited to a 15.5 square foot sign. That's what they propose to do. They could
Okay.
do something much larger if they wanted to.
But they want the 1680 in the front.
No, the 1680 is what they're allowed based on the code.
Okay.
If that was approved by you, allow that second wall sign as a multi-tenant sign. So currently, on page 17 of your packet, that first sign that they got permitted on the facade of the building, they didn't utilize the full 20% that's allowed by code for a wall sign.
I have a question. Ignoring the second right-of-way concept, of the section A2, where it discusses 10% of the smallest/narrowest building elevation or equal to the size of the primary wall sign. So if their primary wall sign is 15.5, is this, ignoring the second right-of-way, is this saying that is also the maximum that they can put on the secondary sign?
It reads to me that would be the case, yeah. They would be limited to that first
Okay.
size.
So then my next question would be, are all the units in that building of the same size? That they would also have a 15.5 or comparable size sign on their front unit?
No, the additional tenants could potentially apply for a much larger sign. They're not limited to a 15.5 square foot sign
Okay.
for their primary sign.
Okay.
Say the other parcel is developed across the street or right away, whatever you want to call it. Would they have to come back before us because it's a different parcel and apply for a variance also to put the same thing on that building? Or can we include both parcels in this request, should we incline to do that?
Right now, you have an application from one tenant of the building, not the entire building or all of the tenants that may occupy it in the future. And it's also not from the property owner, the main property owner, it's just from the tenant occupying one of the units.
Yes?
If you approve this, it would not be applicable to the second building.
So in the future, they would have to come back
It's possible.
and do the same thing.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
Also, the applicant has received a sign permit for the initial sign. If the applicant had not initiated with the first sign at that location on the facade, the applicant had the opportunity to choose where that initial sign went. That sign could have been placed on US 1 side of the building rather than the facade at the initiation of the building development.
Any other questions of staff?
The initial plan here was for a monument sign and for each tenant to have an entry on the monument sign in addition to one on their own bay.
The monument sign that's out front at the entrance, so that's what you're requesting, you're asking about? I don't know what their intent was initially with that. My understanding is that was permitted as a monument sign with one message on there, and that is the property owner, Logistics Center. I don't know if there was any intent to turn that or utilize that as a multi-tenant sign at all. But they do have that option.
It would be the owner's option and decision to convert that monument sign into a directory sign at this time.
Okay. Any other questions, staff? Seeing none, we will open up the public part of the meeting. And our first card, please.
Mark Sutton.
Mr. Sutton, would you please come and give us your name, your address, and enlighten us about your request and some of the things you've heard us speak on, please.
Okay. My name is Mark Sutton. I'm the production manager with Ruag Space USA. Our current business address is 7700 South US Highway 1, Titusville. The variance that we're requesting is kind of a twofold situation. Number one, it's we're looking at it from two phases. Any northbound traffic on US 1, it has to almost come to the marquee sign of the logistics center to be able to see the address, and the ramp that goes off into the median allows them to turn to our location. A lot of times they have passed it and have had to turn around at the next median down the street to come back. That also incurs a problem with safety because they're slowing down trying to find out where they need to go. And of course, the one road that I can't remember what the road is that you come off, there's a pass road on the north side. But it makes it kind of difficult not only for people traveling on the north side to see the sign without having a sign there that says this is our location. And that's why we're requesting it from not only from a safety standpoint but also from a visual standpoint for our clients.
Did you communicate with the owner about the possibility of making the current monument sign into a directory sign?
We are open to anything that they would recommend to us.
But have you engaged in any communications with them about
I
that?
don't believe we have we?
We have discussed that.
Okay.
And they are open to either monument sign.
Mr. Chairman, I'll ask if he's going to be speaking, that he address you at the podium.
Sorry, we're recording this and we're live, so.
Okay.
Okay. And secondly, what is your position about sharing the US 1 side of the building as a multi-tenant sign on that whole side?
We are agreeable to it.
All right, you're agreeable to that? All right, that was option, what, A? Staff? All right, well, welcome to Titusville. We're glad you're here.
Thank you. We're happy to be here.
And I personally, yes, when I read this and looked, yes, you're right. When you're doing 55 coming up through there, there's no way to get in that turn lane when you realize where you want to turn.
Yes, sir.
Does make it hard. And then you got to go up and do the U-turn, and the traffic's coming the other way. So you have no problem sharing the side of basically your building as a multi-tenant sign?
Absolutely
for
not.
other.
We are open to that.
Okay. Any other questions for this witness? All right, thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
sir. And the other card, or do we have another card?
Brian Cam.
Yes. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Brian Cam, and my residence is, or my business residence is in Tampa, 10406 Grove Lane, Odessa, Florida. I work as a site selection consultant and also to help in the interim before Mark came on to put together the sign ordinance for the company and to do the all of the work that needed to be done to get the point to moving into the building and setting up the operations. And I want to thank everyone in the city of Titusville for the great support that we've had from the city of Titusville. I'd like to say that Ruag is a worldwide renowned company, and the type of clientele that you have with Ruag here, hopefully you will have additional companies that come in and move into that building that bring jobs and prosperity to the city of Titusville. So I have no other comments other than what we've written in on the variance request. I have seen many situations myself where traveling is very dangerous coming northbound to try to get into that lane and to turn left. Also, when you're coming southbound, you really don't see the sign of the company or the logistics center sign, the monument sign, because it's so small. So adding another sign to the other side of the building would help the company and future companies for them to have the visibility they need. So,
You made a statement earlier that you had contacted the owners of the building. Do they have any objection to placing on the side of, it is their building?
no, they
so-
don't have any objections to it at all. They've signed off. We had to get their signature on this as well, and they've signed off, and they said that they are completely open to having the wall sign.
Okay.
Okay.
Are there any other questions of the witness? Yes.
You mentioned, from the seat about discussions regarding the monument sign being a directory sign. Can you please explain that now that you have the microphone there?
Earlier on, it was mentioned that the monument sign could be also a directory sign. What I was referring to was the discussions with the port, who's the owner of the building, that they're open to either or. And our suggestion is the wall sign where we can have visibility right on the corner unit, and they're open to that.
Yes, sir.
Were you planning on the wall sign being illuminated?
Yes.
Is your present sign illuminated?
Yes,
I
it
guess I've
is.
been down at night. I didn't know that.
Yes, it is.
Daytime, yeah, what can I say? All right. Any other questions of this witness? All right.
I'm sorry.
Go right
One
ahead.
last thing. Do you regard the use of a monument sign and a wall sign as roughly equivalent?
I don't personally, because the visibility coming from the north side, you won't see the monument sign. But from the wall sign, it's very visible when you're driving northward to see the tenants on that sign, because it's much higher than the monument sign would be.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
There's nobody else here, so we have no other cards, right?
Correct.
All right. So we will close this part of the public discussion and bring it back. Are there any other questions of staff on this matter? Yes, ma'am.
My concern would be the uniformity in the side wall sign with the other future tenants. So if this particular business selected a 15.5-foot sign well beneath the maximum they could have, and the next business comes in with, I don't know, a 40-square-foot sign, and then they choose to put a 40-square-foot sign on this, and I don't know, maybe this is a question for council, can we limit it so that it's all uniformity pursuant to the first sign, 15.5? Or does the code, if we're going to ignore the second right away, allow random sizes now?
The code, if you approve this, it would be a second wall sign, not separate wall signs for each tenant. So it'd be one uniform sign with each of the tenants' business or name, whatever information they want to display on that sign. Maybe separated, but all uniform on that one sign. But as far as size of each of the lettering, I guess is what you're asking?
Yes.
That could be different. That is strictly up to the business. As long as all the signage together doesn't exceed the maximum allowed per the code, we can't regulate that. The message is what we can't regulate. And how that lettering is the font and the any logos or anything like that, that's not something we can regulate. So they could potentially have a multi-tenant sign with one tenant would have a smaller lettering than the second tenant. Yes.
So, council, is that something that we can deal with by condition in this meeting?
I don't think it would be appropriate to go there, because the subject matter that you're talking about is the aesthetics and the choice of the individual tenant. And I would not advise that you condition the lettering and things like that in a particular sign. I would just highlight that this is the discussion that I'm hearing is in line with staff's recommendation, and I would think that the council would consider the multi-tenant directory to be appropriate, because that would allow all of the tenants a universal right to that share of a directory, and I think that that recommendation from staff should be part of your discussion here. But not the content of what actually is included in that sign that the tenant has the right to choose.
Yeah, and I could see a problem if we limited, say, one of the tenants takes 2 or 3 of the quote said units. And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden, boom, 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 they got 3 units or 3.
No,
I'd hate to put some restriction on them for future use. With who knows? They may want to expand and take 2 units in their business. So I could see where you're saying it'd be kind of restrictive. You know, what do I do? Do I give this one 2? Do I give this one 1? When it comes down to permits. Yes, sir.
Just a clarification, I think the multi-tenant sign in the front, you can't really call it a multi-tenant unless the owners agree, you know, that this would be part of their lease. We can't dictate what he wants to put on the sign.
You're correct, we can't do that, but we're leaving that option open if you approve it per our recommendation. If you are inclined to approve a second wall sign,
Yeah,
of
but
course.
we can't dictate to the owner because he's not present today. That he can, you know, the only way you can do this is to put a multi-tenant signs here. No, we can't do that.
You would
I
be
don't think-
allowing a multi-tenant sign, and the discussion between the tenants and the property owner would be between them and wouldn't involve the city in that case.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you mean with this, if we want to approve this, we should approve it, not that we should, but we consider approving it with a multi-tenant sign for the monument sign, right? Or for the front?
Well, that's if you recommend that if you state that they have the option to use the monument sign near the entrance as a multi-tenant sign, then you are effectively denying their request for a second wall sign.
Oh, I see.
That's correct, because currently the monument sign could be converted at the owner's option. The owner's not here before you tonight. However, you've heard from the applicant that they've had conversation with the owner about the possibility of the owner accepting a multi-tenant wall sign, which is what you're discussing tonight. If the owner independently chose to convert the monument sign to a multi-tenant directory, that would not be something that required a variance.
I think, to my thinking, I think you know, putting a multi-tenant sign on the wall, okay, and trying to read the tenants as you go, I think it would be a mistake. And it's to me, it would be a sign for the whole building, and then the multi-tenant sign would be the monument sign or some other sign on the property, so that when you come close to the property, at least you can read the big sign, and then you go into the property, but the multi-tenant sign shouldn't be on the front. It should be on another sign that when you get closer to it, you can read it. Otherwise, you will be confused. You will be looking at the sign, and all of a sudden, you have an accident.
And stopping to read the sign.
Right. Closely. You know, you want to slow down to read the sign, and you are going 55 miles an hour. But if you see a big sign, just like one sign on that building, I think that to me, that would be a lot safer.
I don't buy their argument or your argument relating to speed or accidents, because no matter where you are or you're looking for something, you're always going to be looking for an address. If you don't know where you're going, any road, any highway, any street, you're always going to be slowing down and looking. So, I mean, the speed is going to slow down regardless. That's not a huge consideration for me. But I thought one of the testimonies was that there was discussion with the owner about the possibility, if not agreement, to a monument sign. Can I get some clarification on that? Chairman?
Yeah, address that.
Are you asking based on the testimony that they had suggested that they would be in agreement to a monument sign being
Yes.
converted to a multi-tenant? I thought I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, that they would agree per discussions with the property owner that if a second wall sign was approved, that it would be allowed for multi-tenant and not the monument.
I took the same understanding except substitute wall sign for monument sign. That's what I wanted to check on.
That's what I think you did, yes.
Okay.
Correct me if
so Brad has the
I'm
right
wrong.
understanding.
the applicant should correct me if I'm wrong, just in case.
To be perfectly clear, the owner was in agreement that a wall sign would be acceptable.
And not a monument sign with multi-tenant listings.
Right, the wall sign.
Okay, so I had a misunderstanding then.
Right.
Thank you.
So it's not a disagreement or anything. It's just one sign. I would agree that there should be only one sign on the wall, and that way you glance through it, and then you find out that's the building, and then you can go into the property. And I don't think multiple sign on the building itself is going to be a good thing to have.
I think that's unfair, though, to the future tenants that are going to be there, because if we are already ignoring the code and we are ignoring a second right-of-way and we are granting a variance, and there's a huge amount of space that this company, for whatever reason, has selected a very reasonable portion of that space, I think it's unfair to the future tenants to bestow a privilege to this particular tenant when there is a massive amount of space that can be used.
You're talking about just putting another sign that says Logistics Center, not individual.
Just one sign in the front and to get into the building. You know, I think Logistics Center would be the one, but this one here is, that's what they are asking for. This is what's in the variance, and that's what we need to vote on. But maybe the Logistics Center becomes Together Ahead. That's the sign. People should be looking at that sign and then going in. But my feeling is, you're going on US 1. You shouldn't have multiple signs, just glaring at multiple signs and trying to read them. That's it. And what you are asking for, I think it's a good thing. It's not. I'm not against that. So without changing anything. Just having one sign and without changing anything.
So my understanding is you're supportive of their original request just to have a second wall sign and not a multi-tenant sign.
Right.
Okay.
Where is the monument sign now? Is there one? Is there a monument sign that just says Logistics Center?
Yes.
On the site plan, you can see.
Where's that?
At the entrance.
Oh, in the middle of the entrance.
Oh, right there, either side. Is it on the north side or south side?
Does it exist?
It's on the north side.
It's on the
Oh, on the north side, right by the entrance, right there. It just says Logistics Center?
Yes.
Thank you. I haven't driven by enough, I guess.
I have a question of staff then.
Yes.
If we grant this variance, just plain old granting the variance, second wall sign, can the next unit or company that moves in, can they also request a variance for a second wall sign on that same space?
No, because they don't have a side of the building. Isn't it just one facade all the way down?
That's what I'm asking.
Tenant can ask for a variance.
But where are they going to put a second sign? I mean, isn't it just when you pass this corner building, they just have a front side and a back side?
If you look at page 20 of your packet and you see that wall facing US 1, it is about more than 200 feet. They could put any other tenant could put another second wall sign for their business on that wall somewhere else.
So effectively,
If they got a variance requested,
okay, so if we grant,
or approved, excuse me.
if we grant this variance straight up the way they've requested it, or we grant this variance with the condition that staff has proposed with the 1680, it is essentially the same thing if another tenant sought a variance.
If you approve the variance as requested tonight, just for a second wall sign, that doesn't prohibit the future tenant in another space in that building from asking for the same request. It just means it has to come before you now, and you have to consider their request.
So that wall belongs to everybody, not just them as the tenant in the first building, the first space.
Yes.
Basically, the request would be a second wall sign. Where they put it is up to them. I mean, they have to show us where it is, and it could be approved. But the question to you then would be, would you allow a second wall sign on a property that does not have a second right-of-way? And so you keep repeating that issue every time a new tenant would come in, because they're probably going to ask the same thing.
So that's just an easement, that's not a right-of-way. I mean, it looks to me that's a road through there, so I've considered that a right-of-way.
If you think of a shopping plaza, the driveway going through that shopping plaza is a private road, a private parking lot.
Okay.
That's essentially what this is.
Okay, so it's, okay.
Please consider that the aggregate area that may be used for the sign is on the frontage of this 210 by 40-foot wall frontage facing US 1 would be the 1680 square feet that's mentioned in the staff report. And the aggregate is that 20% for all of the tenants. The tenants may come to the city for their permit application for that side of the building when they come to occupy the building. The remaining units have not been occupied, to my understanding.
Let me just clarify, that 1680 you mentioned is the maximum for a second wall sign that is a multi-tenant directory sign.
Per tenant?
That's not...
No, that's for everybody. Everybody has to get in this 1680.
20% of all signage. So all signs can't exceed more than 20% of the area of that wall, is what it's basically saying.
Okay.
So that 1680 is not the entire area of the wall. That's just 20% of it.
Okay.
And that's the aggregate that all tenants may occupy at that base of the wall.
Correct.
So that's split between all the tenants. That's
Yes.
that 1680. Okay.
If we approve this sign without the limiting the size of the sign, then anybody can come in and put the second sign as part, because this is a wall sign and it's a second sign, right? It's like a sign number 2. So anybody can come in without coming back to the Board of Adjustment because they have the room to do it. Because it's one sign. You can have maybe 3, 4 lines, maybe 5 lines, 10 lines, right? You don't have to come back to the Board of Adjustment to do, because you already approved a second sign. A sign, it doesn't mean just 1 line or 2 lines.
The code has, if you look on page 12 of your packet, it's single-tenant buildings or multi-tenant buildings. And this is a multi-tenant building. And so then the option is that a corner unit may have 1 additional wall sign. And so the applicant is asking for relief from that portion because it also states that you have to have a secondary right-of-way in order for that corner unit to utilize that second wall for a second sign. The additional tenants, if they ask, so assuming this first request is being approved, if additional tenants may ask for a variance to any portion of the code, they may ask for a variance to that whole paragraph. Allow us to have a second wall sign on that wall, not just because it's not only a relief from the secondary right-of-way frontage requirement, but also from the corner unit limitation. Just because they're going to ask, or they may want to ask for a second wall sign, even though they're not specifically on a corner. So my point is, there's nothing that prohibits anybody from asking for a variance. I can't say that those future tenants will get those variances. I can't say what our recommendation would be. I'd have to see what they are proposing. What I can say is that we can eliminate that possibility of having to deal with those questions if you go along with the recommendation as we've recommended to you if you decide to approve a second wall sign, but approve it as a multi-tenant sign. And that way, that whole sign can accommodate have enough space to accommodate all the other tenants on one sign on one portion of that wall. And so that if someone else, another of these tenants, ask us for a variance because they want to have their own space, we'll tell them, well, you've already received a variance, here's a space for you. And we would come before you recommending denial of that application. It would just make it easier. I think it would alleviate the future requests for additional variances. And I'll tell you, our staff is all about trying to keep applicants from having to come before you in any way we can. So that's why we made this recommendation.
So to address Sid's concern about 5-10 lines worth of verbiage on a sign, would it be wise then to keep in here where it says the size of the second sign not to exceed the size of the primary wall sign?
Is there a-
If you're going to approve the applicant's request as it's requested right now, without our recommendation, that you would approve the secondary wall sign, and then that they would just receive it. That's basically what would happen. And so they would be limited, the size of that second wall sign would be limited according to the language here in the code.
Right.
Let me, just one more clarification, and that's it. Okay. Just the 1680, well, if you give them the 1680, then they put the first sign in, and any of the other tenants, by agreement with the owner, they can come in and put the other sign, as long as it's approved as a second sign. But they don't have to come back to us. The only thing they have to do is run it through the building department for approval, and that's it, right?
They would have basically one large sign that with enough space for all the other tenants.
Well,
Yes.
he's not going to put the large sign today.
That's what we're suggesting here, sir. Yes.
Well, let's say we approve this, and then each tenant is, you want him to come in with a multi-tenant sign up front. That's what you're saying.
No, we're suggesting that if you approve the request as we recommended, if you're going to approve a second wall sign, approve it as a multi-tenant sign, then the discussion is between the property owner and the tenants, not the city.
Okay.
So
I
they can
think
decide
that's
what they want to do.
Leave it up to them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right. Do I have a motion, please? Or a recommendation? Or question?
I mean, I can make the motion. It's just,
All right.
I move to approve the, let me see here.
4-2017.
Approve variance number 4-2017 with the staff recommendation, and I'm going to read that. A multi-tenant directory wall sign of up to 1,680 square feet is more than sufficient to accommodate all future tenant signs and prevent similar requests. Approval of the variance with the condition meets the intent of the code. That's what I would like to make the motion for, is to have the sign as a multi-tenant sign.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll second the motion.
All right. Is there any other discussion?
After, I have just one recommendation, can I do the recommendation now or later?
Let's hear it. before
And
we
the
vote.
recommendation is to have a building sign for the whole building, and that's my recommendation for safety purposes. No, this is, the variance is, my recommendation to them is to think about, having one building sign, and then the multi-tenant sign should be closer to the property, like on the monument sign, on the monument sign.
Your motion is to recommend approval of this based on staff's recommendation, but at
Yes,
the same
yes.
time, that for the applicants to consider instead utilizing the monument sign for that multi-tenant
Yes.
sign. Okay.
That's my recommendation.
All right.
The recommendation is not part of the motion. That is
Okay, so
just
can
a
I
direction
do
to
that?
the applicant.
Okay, can I do that later, or it's okay now?
I think they heard you, but that's not part of the motion.
Okay, it's not part of the motion.
All right. Thank you for that clarification. Any other questions?
No.
All right. May we have roll call, please?
Chairman Taylor?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Shahab?
Yes.
Member Hunley?
Yes.
Member Johnson?
Yes?
Alternate Member Smith Rodriguez?
Yes.
All right. Congratulations. We have something we hope you can work with. All right. You're our public. Do you have anything else you wish to bring up or speak on? All right.
Happy to be here, in part of Titusville and the growth that's going to happen. We hope to be able to expand.
If you're going to speak, you need to speak at the mic. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that we're very happy to be here in Titusville. We do have 23,000 square feet that we're currently have. We have first right of refusal for a couple additional bays in the warehouse. We are hoping with the future that's with RUAG Space here that we will be able to utilize more of that and build, and hopefully we'll expand. Would love to have the whole building. So
We would love that.
we realize what's going to happen here. I think it's very exciting, not only for the city of Titusville, but for Brevard County. And we're just happy to be a part of it.
What do you actually do?
We will be making satellite panels and send them across the river to OneWeb, who will be actually making the low-band internet satellites and be utilizing Blue Origin to launch them.
Wow.
The goal is to put around 900 satellites about 750 miles above the Earth, and will provide low-band internet service globally. So there will be no place on Earth that you will not have internet service. It's very unprecedented, and it's great to be a part of this.
Great. So
So-
this is a partnership with Web One.
Yes,
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So now we'll go to reports and staff. You wish to bring up our vacancies?
You did have one letter that was submitted to City Council, and they accepted it by alternate member Ritchie. Submitted his resignation. I believe he's out of the state and unable to return. So you do have an opening, and we'll certainly seek an alternate.
What's the requirements on the?
The alternate's open, right?
We have two openings, one regular and one alternate member position. However, if the public listening would like to apply for the regular member position, they must be a licensed architect, a licensed engineer, a licensed landscape architect, a licensed surveyor, a general contractor, a building contractor, a person associated with the building trades industries, a person having an education, bachelor or master's degree in urban planning, a person with a current American Institute of Certified Planner certification, a person with a minimum of 10 years experience in land development, or a person with a minimum of 10 years in experience in urban planning field. So if you meet one of those qualifications, please submit your application to the city clerk's office.
But that qualification is not applicable to the alternate position,
That's correct. The alternate member is open to public at large.
public at large. So anybody can fill that position, and we'd love to have a spare, because I already know that I'll miss January or July. So maybe we won't have anything. Yeah. All right. Council, anything to report?
That's all. Thanks.
All right. Any other members have anything to bring up? Okay.
Sir, I do have one thing I just want to mention
I'm
to you.
sorry.
There was in my report just a packet. Some of your
Yes.
members asked last year for this, and we came up with, it's page 54 of your packet, a public participation guide. We gave it to council. They liked it. They accepted it. We also gave it to Planning and Zoning Commission. But it just gives the public and all board members and commissioners and council members and any future members will get this to as well. Just the background about what our department does, what all the boards do, and the roles, responsibilities, and how the public can get involved, engaged. And there is an exhibit on the back of this that does include some, how do you call it, criteria that you could use as part of your review of a variance. It's kind of a brief description of what a variance is and what hardships are and things of that
Okay,
nature.
page 75.
Yes,
Is this information available on the website to the public?
it is on the website.
Under what classification?
It may be under the planning department, but I could certainly see if we can have that sent out to you in a
Okay.
link as well.
Okay.
Okay? And then there's a PowerPoint presentation, which I won't go over unless you have any questions on it, but that's what we gave to the city council, kind of summarize everything in here. The members were new. They were familiar with a lot of land use and planning questions and issues, so we wanted to sit down with them and go over all of this. And that's when we gave them this guide. So hopefully it's helpful to you. Any new members will receive this as well.
Okay. And of course, the...
Excuse me,
I'm
we
sorry.
also have an application for next month.
We do have an application for next month, yes.
We do have one,
Excuse
all
me.
right. Well, for the public that's watching, the latest issue of the Titusville Talking Points is now available online, and I understand the video version will be available possibly next week. It's in the works, and not to be outdone, Brevard County is now doing a quarterly. So we led the way. So that's exciting. So if anybody wants to see that, please check the website for that. All right, no other information or to say, we will adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you.